Dream Team, welcome to the 3 video series then on 2018 paper. So there's 3 videos in total, one for theme 5, one for theme 6, one for theme 7 for 2018 this time, okay? So this clip is going to go over the 2018 theme 5. Now remember, when you open the paper, when you see the paper, obviously you'll keep calm in the start of the exam. You have your water there or your equipment there, and you will do your names, your centre number, your candidate number. You will see it's unit 2, obviously it's an hour and 30 minutes. This unit is on theme 5, 6 and 7. You can go through the instructions as and when. You know you answer question 3 or 4. You don't answer question 4. Now, if you want to, you can turn to theme 8, which is the 4th question. Okay. Now you have to make sure that it says theme 8, environmental challenges, and you can actually, as we know, cross through all of the theme 8 questions to signify to yourself you don't have to answer them. Now, you don't have to go and do this at the start of the exam, but me personally, it would remind me that I don't need to use to answer those questions. So remember, you do 1, 2 and 3, which are 5, 6, 7 theme. Okay? So you turn over, you know your first set of questions will be on theme 5, weather, climate and ecosystems. Says, study the graph below, global carbon emissions from 1900 to 2010. Give the total increase in carbon dioxide emissions between 1900 and 2000 for 1 mark. You tick 1 box. So it asks for 1900 to 2000, and it's important to note that's not the end of the graph. So if you think in 2000, if we follow up, it's about here. Okay, there we are. So about here. And then in 1900 it's here. So you will do one take away the other. Well, we know it's not 25,000 because it doesn't start at 0. 17,000 is too small. So the answer is 21,500. So you just tick the correct answer. Nice easy one to start you off. Then the next question. Complete the sentences by selecting the correct word from the box below. Now this is important, use each word only once. It's 3 marks, you get a mark for each word. Do not leave any of these blank. It's an easy question. The answers have been given to you within this box, okay? So don't leave any blank. Now you can highlight this if you want to, the actual words as well if it helps. So the carbon cycle is the movement of carbon between something, the land and the ocean. So if we look here, it's not going to be respiration. It's not going to be factory. Atmosphere is the movement between the atmosphere, the land and the oceans. So in the gap, in the space provided, we write atmosphere. An example of a natural carbon store. So an area that stores carbon. Respiration, no. Factory, no. We've used atmosphere. Decomposition, no. Forest, yes. A forest stores carbon. So we know that we've used that one. One way that carbon moves from living things into the atmosphere. So one way that carbon moves from living things into the atmosphere is by, okay, well, respiration. Respiration. Okay, done. Next question then. Ice cores can be used as evidence of climate change. Give one other piece of evidence for climate change for 1 mark. So you've got to name anything other than ice cores. Now myself, I'm just going to write tree rings. You've got the mark scheme for this on your email, so you'll see there's lots of answers you could possibly have. But you could have had sea level rise, you could have had glacier retreat, temperature changes, historic records. You literally just write any one of those for 1 mark. Okay, so now we up our ante a little bit. We have to explain why ice cores are evidence of climate change for 4 marks, okay? So we need to have an explanation that is good enough to grant us those 4 marks. First of all, I'm going to give an example of where ice cores may be taken. So, for example, Greenland or Antarctica. Now, you're going to write this in sentences. So, ice cores could be taken from Greenland or Antarctica. This is where winter snowfalls are compressed year on year. Okay, so winter snowfalls are compressed year on year. And that eventually turns to ice. So you'd write this in sentences. So eventually turns to ice. The gases trapped provide evidence. So the gases trapped provide evidence. And that shows what the gases in the atmosphere at the time the snow fell. Okay, and that means if you can see what the gas is, the gas composition, that would be a good word to use, the gas composition, the gas makeup of the atmosphere was like then you can tell the temperature, you can work out the temperature across thousands of years. Okay, so you can work out what the temperature used to be like by the atmospheric composition of the gases. There we go. All right. Okay, so you'll be able to get more than 4 marks if you write like that is there. So moving on to the next question, it's a suggest from photograph, and obviously we've practiced these. So study the photograph below, volcanic eruptions in Iceland. Suggest why this eruption could contribute to climate change. Use evidence from the photograph, 3 marks. A little bit of a reminder to you, when it says use evidence from the photograph, you need to be able to see it in the photograph. So for example, when we look at tectonics, there's a question that asks for social impacts seen in the photograph, which means you need to link it explicitly to what you can see in the photograph. Don't give something wacky that isn't in there. You need to be able to link it to what you can see, and obviously quite clearly in this we're going to link to the ash cloud. So for 3 marks then we're going to say, and I'm just going to bullet point but you're going to write in full sentences, that it erupts a large amount of ash into the atmosphere. Okay, in a full sentence. And then that ash reflects the sunlight back to space. Reflects sunlight back to space. That means that less solar radiation, or sunlight is fine, less solar radiation is reaching the Earth's surface. So reaching Earth's surface, and obviously that leads to global cooling. So to reiterate, when the volcano erupts, it's a large amount of ash in the atmosphere that actually spreads quite far, like continents, sometimes global, because of air circulation, and that means that the incoming shortwave radiation can't get through the ash, so this global surface cools down because it's got less radiation heating it. You can give if you can, amazing, give an example like Mount Pinatubo, 4 coldest summers after that eruption across Europe. So, moving on then. Study the graph below the number of tropical storms in the North Atlantic. Right, describe the trend in the number of North Atlantic tropical storms between 1970 and 2011, which actually is the whole graph. It's 2 marks. Now, because it says trend, obviously we're going to talk about safety marks. So when we're talking about safety marks, we can give the highest and lowest as those, the highest amount and what year, and the lowest amount and what year. But they're just going to be our emergency marks, not our actual marks, because the question asks for the trend, the pattern, the overall. So not one-off anomalies, it's asking for overall. Now, overall, I would argue that this increases over time, but with fluctuations. It fluctuates. So although it is increasing over time, it does fluctuate. I'm going to give the range over the years is between, what's the lowest here? Lowest is probably about 4 tropical storms to the highest, which is what, 27 tropical storms per year. Okay, so that's me giving the trend of the whole graph, saying that it increases, but obviously with fluctuations, and it ranges from 4 to 27 per year. Now, actually in that I've given the highest and the lowest anyway. You might want to give a safety mark if you can think of an anomaly where everything else is higher and then it's lower, but there we are. Okay, got your 2 clear marks there. Now a little bit of numeracy here, nice bit of numeracy. Calculate the percentage increase in the number of tropical storms between these years. Now the important bit here is show your workings, because you get 2 marks, 1 for the answer and 1 for your workings. So we need to know how to work out a percentage. Well, first of all, we've got to give the difference between the 2 numbers given. So 10 and 19, okay? So we've got to give them difference. So we do 19 take away 10. Right? Now we have to, second, divide it by the start figure, whatever the first figure is. So the first figure is 10, so we go divided by 10. Okay, and then we times by 100, so third, times by 100, which will give the percentage. Now, I haven't got a scientific calculator in front of me, have I? No. But you can write this calculation into a scientific calculator and the answer will give you 90. Obviously, you will have a calculator with you in the exam, so you'll be able to type that in on the calculator. Okay? If you do have any questions though, just ask. On to the next question then. Now again, we know these questions well because it says give 1 reason for 2 marks. So you know you've got to explain your reason. And it's for intensity of the storms may increase due to climate change. Okay, well with climate change, there's going to be an increase in sea temperatures. Right? Now, if the sea temperatures increase, that is going to heat the air above the sea. We know that when air heats up, it rises. So that's going to increase the rising air. Now we know that as air rises, evaporation also rises. So the more rising air is going to increase the rate of evaporation. And obviously, if there's more evaporation, there's going to be equaling more storms. Okay, there's going to be more extreme storms because as seas increase in temperature because of climate change, the air above is going to heat up, rise, and that's going to mean more evaporation too, which is going to mean greater storms. So, tick one box which describes the location where tropical storms begin for 1 mark. Okay, so describes the location where tropical storms begin. North of the Tropic of Cancer, south of the Tropic of Cancer, or between the Tropics of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Well, we know from our revision between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Okay, so nice easy 1 mark there. Study the map below the path of Hurricane Matthew in October 2016. Now you need the path with you. Actually, I'm going to fold this so I can have both on show. There we are. So you'll have to have your booklet open. Now, complete the gaps in the paragraph below to describe the path of Hurricane Matthew for 3 marks. Now, there is no there's no help for this. You've got to do it from your own thoughts. So let's have a go at this. Hurricane Matthew forms over the Atlantic Ocean, and the first island that it affects is, so forms over the Atlantic here. The first island it hits on its flight path, Barbados. Okay, so Barbados. After travelling in a westerly direction, never eat shredded wheat, the hurricane turns northwards and passes to the west of Hawaii. Okay, so we're passing northwards. On passing Cuba, the hurricane turns and travels in a something direction. Okay, so it turns and it goes in this direction. So never eat shredded wheat. So it's between north and west. So it must be a north-westerly direction. It reaches latitude what? On Saturday the 8th of October. So Saturday 8th of October, I think that, so 30's there, so probably +2, 32 degrees. You actually got the mark if you said 33 degrees as well, but I do think it's 32 degrees. Okay, so nice little bit of skill there for you, which you will get if you think about this and your north, south, east and west. Right, next then for theme 5, you've got a nice little source given to you here and an essay based question. Now this is your last question for theme 5. So study the photograph and the fact box. The impact of Hurricane Matthew in Haiti 2016. So we've got a picture here of people potentially trapped by the floodwater that Hurricane Matthew has brought. Also you can look at the quality of the buildings as well. Population of Haiti 10.9 million. GDP 8.7 billion. It caused damage estimated at 1.8 billion. That is a huge amount compared to their GDP. Destroyed entire coffee and cocoa plantations. We're going to have a problem here because if it's done this with other farms, then that may lead to a lack of food. But also, how are they going to make money to pay for this damage? It's destroyed a hospital and damaged 4 others. Okay, well they probably don't have that many hospitals in the first place. So damaging the hospitals at the time when people need them is a complete disaster. It's left 1.4 million people needing emergency aid. Do they have the money or resources for that? Probably not. It's caused 1,600 deaths. Well, that's going to have huge impacts on society as well. We're going to have feelings of bereavement. We're going to have very upset society. Secondary impact then has led to cholera outbreak that's killed 29 people, I imagine, so far. So disease is spreading, probably due to lack of sanitation, clean water, shelter, and medical care. Okay, so we've gone through the sources. Now this is a classic, this. To what extent? As soon as we see that, we already know. We are arguing. We are weighing up. So it's not just writing a story. We are going to use connectives. We know this straight away just from seeing that. We're probably going to come to a conclusion on our own opinion. But here we go, people. We're going to have an argument. So, to what extent did Hurricane Matthew impact on people's lives and the economy of Haiti? Use evidence from above. Of course we're going to do that. Of course. Right. Now, you're probably reading that thinking, to what extent? Well, horrific. Of course. How am I going to argue that? You're not arguing if it did or didn't have an impact. You are arguing whether the impact was worse for people, i.e. society, or the economy. So which was impacted to a worse extent? Now, obviously, they both impact each other. But I'm going to start off by looking at people. Well, if you think one hospital and 4 others were damaged, where do people go to get their medical care? Where do people go to get their help? In a natural disaster, you need your hospitals, and those were damaged. So that is probably a severe impact for the people. 1.4 million people needed emergency aid. Well, if your hospitals are damaged, you've got 1.4 million people who potentially can't get the help they need, which is linked again to the economy with the GDP. Not only that, 1,600 deaths means that, sorry, someone just walked in, put me off. 1,600 deaths means that your society is going through bereavement. They have to cope with that many losses, the knock-on effect for families, for friends. And alongside not having any medical care, you've got spread of diseases such as cholera. Okay? You've got spread of diseases. You've got the loss of homes. There's more impacts, but there you go. Now, also linked to that, on the other hand, although, moreover, you've got the cost of damage being 1.8 billion, when actually their GDP is only 8.7 billion. So how on earth are they going to pay for that? Not only that, but they've lost their entire coffee and cocoa plantations. So how on earth are they going to pay that money back? Are they going to pay that damage if they've lost their income? So they don't have a big GDP anyway, but they've lost their income. So this essay is going to be littered with connectives. You're going to use connectives throughout. However, although, on the other hand, to weigh up whether you think the impact on the people is worse or the impact on the economy is worse. And obviously you can recognise that they're linked, but which one is worse, people? However, although, on the other hand, okay, And then finally, you're going to come to a conclusion on your opinion. Now remember, if you want to set yourself aside from the rest, you'll quantify the difference. So you'll say a severe impact on the people is the hospital being destroyed. However, a vital impact on the economy is the cost of 1.8 billion. A huge impact on one side is this. However, on the other side, a catastrophic impact is. So to be clear, you are weighing up whether the impact is worse for people or the economy. And I would probably say, well, it's worse for the people because. However, it's worse for the economy because. On the other hand, it's worse for the people because. But it's worse for the economy because. And then you come to a conclusion. And if you can, use quantifiable words. So that a catastrophic impact is actually in the long term. That'd be a good idea as well. You could talk about long term and short term. But in the long term, if they've lost their income, how on earth are they going to come back from this in the long term? Okay, but that brings you to the end of theme 5. Well done for watching, everybody. Well done.